Beyond the Bandlewood comes out today, and I wanted to show you guys some of the decks I'm excited for and what I'm going to be playing. Day 1 and Day 2 are usually the best days for experimentation with new cards, so if you want to play a Predict deck with the Mariah Grey Mother, then go ahead and do that. And if it ends up being bad, then that's fine too, because when the meta settles down, you can eventually move on to a deck that fits your playstyle and get you some of that sweet LP. Right now, the meta is just all about having fun. I know deck building can be pretty difficult and hard for some people, so if you need a starting point, I got you covered. That's why I'm going to be showing you 5 decks that I made, but sadly I don't have early access to some of the new cards, so everything you're going to see in this video is theory crafting. That also means I wouldn't recommend crafting most of these decks if you're short on wildcards. But if you're 100% sure you want to play a card like Nami or Ziggs, then just go ahead and craft them and build a deck for them, because as the meta shapes up and decks get refined, it's almost guaranteed that there will be a deck for those champions. Maybe not at a competitive level, but they will be playable. Alright, so with that, let's go over to some of the decks that I made. The first one I have right here is actually a Nami Fizz deck. I think this is the deck that has the highest probability of becoming a competitive, possibly tier 1 deck. It has obviously your champions Fizz and Nami. Nami seems to be probably the strongest champion from this expansion, and we're playing with cards like Otterpuss to give you a prank. We're playing cards like the Benemone to give you 2 more pranks in your hand to activate your Nami, to activate your Fizz. Also playing the Kelp Maidens, give you even more pranks every time you strike that Nexus. Also has elusive, so it is a pretty good buff target. The other 1-drop we're playing is the Yordle Squire, which gives you another spell in your hand to use on your elusives. A card you might not expect here that I put in is the Bandle Commando. I think this card is super sleeper. Those owls, the owl cats, that the 2-1 with spell shield that this card gives you, you can put that on your board, and then late game you're going to be buffing that with the Fleet Admiral Shelly. It's going to feel really nice to have your elusive army with a lot of these elusive cards that are in this deck, and then just have some spell shields to keep yourself safe from AoE, because as we know, elusive die very fast to removal. And you know, we have the return of our greatly missed fish friend, Wiggly Burblefish. It's going to certainly shine in this deck. I think it's going to be one of the centerpieces to actually make this work and closing out games. And then as for the spells, 9 spells might not seem like much in a deck like this, but we have so many pranks to activate our spell synergies that 9 is probably just fine. We have 2 Purpleberry Shakes to buff up your elusives. Trinket Trade, this card just seems busted. It gives you another Otterpuss, and I think that card is also just going to be pretty good. Stress Defense, this is a pretty flexible card. You could put in like 2 of these, maybe. If you want to save your Nami sometimes, save your Fizz, because they don't have great protection tools in this deck. And then we have the Hidden Pathways, because we're going to be adding pranks to our hand, so this card will always be a draw 2 for 3. Seems like a super solid list. I am pretty convinced that this is going to end up being at least tier 2, quite possibly tier 1. And as this list gets refined, you're going to see Nami as the champion for sure. Maybe we'll go to Twisted Fate, maybe we'll stay on Fizz, maybe we'll find a way to put in Poppy even, to buff more of these elusives. This seems like a great starting point. If you want to start racking up that LP, I think you can't really go wrong with a deck like this. And for the next deck, we have the latest announced champion, Ziggs. And he does go in a deck with Xerath. They have the exact same level up condition. And I just realized that Ziggs has 4+, and Xerath just says 4. Alright, that's interesting. Nice consistency there by Riot. So we're running a total of 7 landmarks, because putting landmarks in your deck is honestly not that great. But we have a lot of followers that summon landmarks as you play them on the field. But the landmarks we have here are the Ancient Preparation, Explosive Minefield, and the Preservarium. If the Ancient Prep or the Preservarium count down to 0, it will count as a landmark being destroyed, so your Ziggs and Xerath, they get +1 on their countdown. And if that doesn't work, we have cards like the Desert Naturalist to destroy one of your landmarks and then instantly summon a 5/4 and whatever effect you get from, for example, the Explosive Minefield. Also, we have the Endless Devout, which summons the Sarcophagus, which is a countdown 3, and if that landmark gets destroyed, it will summon a 5/3 with Fearsome. So if you use the Desert Naturalist on that card, you get a 5/3 and a 5/4, which is a pretty insane tempo swing. And cards like Rockhopper and Unraveled Earth are just really good to place as traps on the field, wait for your opponent to summon a minion, and they instantly get destroyed, granting your opponent vulnerable. And if you have the Wastewalker on the field, I think this card might actually end up carrying this deck. It gets +1/+1. So if you play the Wastewalker on turn 3 and you have something like a Ancient Prep played on turn 2, you have a Rockhopper, all these cards, when they get destroyed, when their landmarks get destroyed, the Wastewalker gets +1/+1. If you destroy as much as 1 single landmark for the Wastewalker, you're looking at a 3 mana 4/4 with Overwhelm, which is insanely overstated. There's just something about Shuriman 3-drops that just hit different. I was really hoping for Merciless Hunter to get nerfed. We didn't get that. But if you are a Shuriman card and you cost 3 mana, you're probably in a really good spot in this game, and the Waste Walker is no exception. Some other cards we're playing are the Herald of the Magus. Xerath and Ziggs actually look to synergize pretty well with Overwhelm, especially Ziggs, and granting them +2/+2 is just always going to be pretty good. Safety Inspector is a 1-of in this deck. I think this can be played as kind of a Jack the Winner, where you get a Inspection Pass, which destroys a landmark to deal 3 to anything. It's going to be a pretty good card late game if you need to destroy your landmarks and get some burn damage maybe. And honestly, this looks like a super solid deck. There's card draw with the Preservarium and the Pokey Stick. Even the Unraveled Earth draws you a card. Shapestone is just broken. Seems like a deck that will get refined very fast. I'm not sure if this is it. Honestly, I could see Xerath being replaced by Talia in the future, because what he does is just pretty weak. And if you replace him with Talia, you can play something like the Risen Altar, which is the 6-mana landmark that summons a 7/6 with Spell Shield and Overwhelm when it gets destroyed. When you copy that with Talia, it's just insane tempo. So we're gonna have to see how this deck shapes up, but I think Ziggs is going to be a staple in this deck for sure. So if you like playing this type of landmark deck, I'd say Ziggs is a pretty safe craft. This deck is a Teemo and Caitlyn deck that focuses on shuffling as many traps as possible into the enemy deck. And I'm going to be completely honest right away. I don't think that this is any better than the Teemo, Ezreal, Freljord decks that we've been seeing and that have been very meta for a little while. And that is also kind of the issue that I've had with Teemo decks in the past. Every Teemo deck kind of plays with the same goal in mind, and that is to make your opponent draw as many puff caps as possible. So for that you need to do 2 things. The first one is shuffling as many puff caps as possible, and there is just a best way to do that, and that is with the Puffcap Peddler and playing protection spells like Troll Chant, Elixir of Iron, even some removal cards and freezes to keep yourself safe. Everything shuffles Puffcaps. And the second thing is to make your opponent draw as many cards as possible. There is also a best way to do that with the Hexcore Foundry, with the Veteran Investigator, which is a card we're not running here. We are running the Aloof Travelers instead because, you know, it's a new card and it looks pretty sweet. So what I could have done for this deck was just play a Freljord Teemo deck with Caitlyn instead of Ezreal, but we want to play with some of the new cards and we want to just do some sweet stuff. Well, the expansion is new, and when this list gets refined, we'll see what we go back to. But for now, I think this is a pretty sweet direction for it. So we're shuffling the Flash Bomb Traps with Caitlyn. Every time she strikes, he plants 2 of them. We're also playing the Sting Officer, which plants 2 more Flash Bomb Traps on next to strike. And we have the Piltover Peacemaker, which deals 2 to an enemy and shuffles 2 Flash Bomb Traps. If I'm going to be completely honest, I'm not sure if this card is any better than Mystic Shot. I think that 1 mana difference could be a pretty big deal. So if you feel like this card is inconsistent and doesn't help you deal with some of the frightening enemy board, swap this for a Mystic Shot or put in some more Mystic Shots for a mini morph, for example, because this card, we're not really sure how good this card is going to be in the meta. But because there are so many big units that we could be afraid of, like we have Sion decks, we could see Viego still, maybe even Senna decks, which this deck doesn't have a great way to remove either. I included 2 copies of Minimorph to be able to deal with some of the bigger boys and, you know, keep yourself safe from all those big threats. To keep our units safe, we have the Stress Defense, and that is the only thing to keep us safe, but I think this should get the job done quite well on most units, because a lot of units care about striking. Like, for example, you want to attack with the Lecturing Yordle and you want to keep him alive to get more poison darts. We have Caitlyn and Teemo who need to strike to plant their traps. And with Stress Defense, you're still going to be striking because you have that 1 attack. Alongside Minimorph, sometimes you just need to give the enemy Sion 1 attack instead of 10. And Stress Defense is flexible enough to do that for you. And then for some of the top end, we're running the Ava Achiever. I'm not sure if this card is good enough. You could probably cut this for something else. I don't know what, maybe another Aloof Travelers or something, or, you know, the actual Mystic Shots. But this card is just hilarious when it goes off, so I had to include it. And then we have the Karina Mastermind, the true finisher of this deck, activating every trap in the top 5 cards of the enemy deck. If you have been doing some proper shuffling, you're going to basically just OTK your opponent, especially if there's also an Ava Achiever on the board. I think Karina Mastermind is going to be one of the most exciting cards in this expansion, and she's going to create a lot of highlight moments. Draven Scion is a mid-range discard deck that I am personally very excited for. Scion levels when you've discarded or summoned 35 plus power, and one of the cards that people might not expect is the Lady of Blood. When you discard a card, you get a fleeting copy. So this also means that you can shuffle 2 Scions into your deck, but every card you discard becomes a fleeting copy that gets discarded at the end of the turn, or you can play it. So that will level Sion super fast. I am not entirely sure about taking Piltover as a direction, but I think the Boom Baboon is going to help with pushing a lot of damage early, because the Flame Chomper can pull units out of the way. For example, the Fearsome blockers for the Fallen Rider that summons a Risen Rider, which is a 4-2 with Fearsome. And to consistently be able to play that Risen Rider on turn 2, we're playing the Zal Knight Urchin, we're playing the Reborn Grenadier, because honestly, a 4-2 with Fearsome, that's a better Curse Keeper, or Escaped Abomination, whatever. Which is just kind of crazy when you think about it. As for the spells, it's pretty simple. We're playing Mystic Shot because it's just always good. We're playing Get Excited because it discards and it can, like, you know, it's that little bit of burn damage that you might need at the end. And we're playing the Survival Skills because this card is going to be very important, keeping some of your bigger units alive. For example, you can play this on your Ancient Warmonger, which is a 5-5 with Overwhelm, which is insanely powerful as stats. And we're also playing the Lost Soul, which gives a Twin Blade Revenant. And when Twin Blade Revenant dies, it gives you another Lost Soul in your hand. So you kind of have like this endless cycle. Some Dredger because it's a 4-3, which is just good stats. You can give this Overwhelm too when you discard Sion, and then it becomes a Iron Ballista. Grave Physician, discard a card, draw a unit. Just super solid tempo. Helps with Sion's level up. And while I'm not a fan of only playing 7 spells in a deck like this, it is very good with Sion because you want to build that big board and then you want to kill off Sion so you can rally. But one of the reasons why I'm just not sure if this is good is because I think that Harrowing is pretty crazy synergy with Sion. That deck will also allow you to play a card like Atrocity. And as much as I dislike Atrocity, I can certainly see the value in wanting to close out a game that efficiently. All in all, I think this deck is going to be carried by Draven and his axes that let you discard for free. You have the Reborn Grenadier, which is just another crazy powerful card. And also the Fallen Rider, because this card just creates a crazy amount of tempo in the early game. This is one of the decks I'm very excited to play out, but I have a very hard time imagining in my head how something like this would play. Theory crafting this deck was basically just putting in pieces that made sense, and then eventually just adapting to the meta and seeing what you actually need as far as cards go to be able to close out games and to stay in the game while you're trying to get that Overwhelm finish. And the last deck I have for you guys today is a Tristana and Poppy deck. This deck focuses on going very wide and then rallying with the Demacia card, Relentless Pursuit, and Poppy and Tristana giving your entire board impact. So the more you attack, the more damage you're going to be doing directly to the enemy nexus. And we also have a card like Ranger's Resolve. Because we are going so wide, we want to keep our units safe from opponents' AoE removal. Obviously we're running Hidden Pathways because this card is just kind of bonkers, and Bandle City does a lot of adding cards to your hand. The last spell is the Yordles in Arms, which is just an amazing finisher for a deck like this. We're very often going to have this active as a +4/+4. And if you went wide with the board, well, a simple card like a Protoporo, instead of being a 1/1, it's going to be a 5/5. If you're able to rally in the same turn, that will almost every time just be enough to win the game. Besides that, a very important card for this deck is obviously the Bandle City Mayor, creating a dual region card, or I should say multi-region card, and also giving you one in your hand to play even more and go even wider on the board. Gruff Grenadier also is a 4/3 with impact, gives you another Yordle, which Yordles are very often multi-region. Tenor of Terror is also multi-region. And then we just have some like feel-good early game cards like the Loping Telescope, giving more cards. Bomber Twins, which got revealed yesterday with Ziggs, which was exactly the multi-region card from Shurima that we needed for a deck like this. So I'm very happy we have this one. And then the Bandle Commando, which gives you the Owlcat, which is from Ionia, Protoporo, Freljord. And then lastly, of course, the Bandle Tree will very often just close out a game against slower matchups because you are getting so many different cards from so many different regions that I'm pretty sure every now and again, you're just going to win the game with a card like this. This might even be a 2-of to make it a little more consistent. I feel like this is a win con you can actually go for. And Poppy buffing your entire board when you're going wide is also just very powerful. And Tristana is just pretty good payoff. It's a boring card, but playing a multi-region deck, you want to play Tristana to actually close out games. I think this one is going to be very hard to refine, and this is also a deck that's only going to get better as more cards get released. So right now, it's not quite there yet, but it should at the very least be playable and give you a pretty good time. So with that, that is actually all the decks that I have for you guys today. I'm going to keep it a secret what deck I'm going to be uploading first, but you can look forward to so many new and sweet new brews that I am very excited to play. And if you want to catch me on Twitch, I will be online every day at 1 p.m. Central European time to play with some of these amazing new cards. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and the decks that I brew up for you. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you're going to be playing on day 1 of the new expansion. I'm very excited to hear about all your brews, and I hope I'll be able to chat with some of you guys live on Twitch. But for now, that's all I have. So enjoy the new expansion. Have fun in Bandle City. and I'll see you next time.